Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Garden Hour. I am Gwen Funk, and I'm coming to you from Holt County, Missouri, near Oregon, right along the Missouri River up here in Northwest Missouri. So we are really glad to see everybody. I looked at the registration list, and it looked like we have the state is well represented today. So I am so very glad that you are here. Just a few things to go over here before we start in on our programs. I just want to remind you of where the horticulturalists are stationed around the state. So you can kind of find your area and find the color and name that kind of is associated with you. Also, we don't really pay attention to those borders all the time. So really you can reach out to any and all of us, and we will do our best to answer any of your questions. And then also, I would like to take a moment here, and if you have your phones with you, or either scan the QR code or maybe take a picture of the screen to get this website at the bottom. We are doing a survey just for our future planning for next year. We changed the format a little bit this year and went to monthly, and changed a little bit about how we present our programs. So we want to hear back from you. This program is for you. We want to serve your needs. So please take a minute and participate in that survey so that we can get some good data to drive our program and make it better. So again, take a picture real quick or scan the QR code with your phone, and then take the survey when you can. Also note that we are live streaming on YouTube, so you can just go to MUIPM. On that website, you will also see the full Garden Hour recordings and some snippets of just the individual subject matters that we have on the program. All right, and from there, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Zack, who has promised me that we are going to have some rain here soon.
Yes, Gwen, thank you, and hello, everyone. And actually, I'm going to start today by sharing a picture that those who are out around the state might not believe. But this is Columbia, Missouri, and this was on Monday, so November 17th. And that's not snow, that's hail. And so we actually had a bit of a surprise kind of thunderstorm come through the Columbia area. Didn't drop any, fortunately, very large hail. I think the largest we saw
Just
was
real
quarter
quick.
size. But you can see here, it was enough to really cover the ground around Columbia and Missouri's campus. And so some unusual weather here in central Missouri, definitely in November here as well. But this was a thunderstorm that brought us some rain, and we needed it here in Columbia. And so last month we were talking about having a dry October, and that's really how we finished here. So now that we're into November, looking back at October, temperatures were about 5 degrees above average. And so this was a top 10, actually warmest October on record. So it was our 8th warmest October for the state of Missouri. And so kind of continued that warm fall because we also had warm temperatures in September as well. And then if we look at the precipitation, we see that for October, Missouri statewide precipitation was nearly an inch below average, so 0.8 below average there. And that was our third consecutive dry month. So August, September, and October, all drier than average. And we know we've kind of been in a drought. And that's actually exactly what we saw back in 2024 there as well. And so the thunderstorm that brought us some hail in Columbia, unfortunately, didn't really bring us a lot of rainfall. And that's true for a lot of the state here. This is a map showing rainfall over the past 7 days. And while we see a lot of green dots showing that it has rained in places, if you read the numbers here, the totals aren't overall that impressive. And so outside of a few higher totals just north of Springfield around Bolivar, and in the Columbia area getting closer to an inch, most of us have just seen maybe a few tenths of an inch of rainfall over the past week. And that's been a trend that's really been seen all of November. And so this map here on the right shows our month-to-date rainfall totals. And I just want to note that the blue color on this map is greater than 3/4 of an inch of rainfall. And so outside of that storm in Bolivar And then over near Cape Girardeau, most of the state has seen less than 3/4 of an inch of rainfall. And in fact, if you look at the map here, we have parts of western Missouri that have received no rainfall for the month of November so far. That looks to include you as well in Holt County, Gwen. So I understand wanting the rainfall there. And if we look at the major sites around the state, all of our metros running anywhere from 1 to 2 inches below average for the month for rainfall there. Now, temperatures have been interesting. I'll show here shortly that we actually started the month cooler than average. We had a really hard killing freeze, but then we flipped to some warmer temperatures, especially late last week and into the weekend. And as a result, through the first 2/3 of the month here, we're running anywhere from 1 to 4 degrees above average throughout the state. But the freeze that we did see, we had kind of a soft freeze where temperatures really got into the upper 20s and around freezing near the beginning of the month. But the hard killing freeze came really from the period November 10th through November 12th. And these are the lowest temperatures we saw around the state. But I'll note that the cold was really pretty widespread. Most of us, except for maybe the boot heel, got down into the lower 20s and even the teens. And so we see the lowest readings in Shannon County here, 16 degrees for November. So for it being really our first hard freeze of the year, pretty impressive low temperatures that we saw there. Now, I've been talking about the last couple of months, and we've definitely been dry. And so this is the current U.S. Drought Monitor map that comes out every Thursday. And this is from last Thursday. And we see that this map really hasn't changed much over the past month. And in fact, almost all of Missouri here is abnormally dry, in moderate drought, or even severe drought in some locations. And this is some dryness that really now goes back to the end of July and August that is prolonged here as we really start to get into the winter as well. But that does bring us to the good news, and that is that we have some significant rainfall in the forecast over the next week that should help our November totals and the drought situation as well. So this is a rainfall forecast for the next 3 days, so valid through Saturday morning. And I'll note that the entire state is definitely expected to get some rainfall. So not as much along and north of I-70, anywhere from 1/4 to an inch of rainfall in those locations. But south of I-70, we're looking at 1 to up to 2.5 inches of rainfall that are forecast through Saturday morning. So a real soaker over the next 3 days, with really most of that coming tomorrow, especially for southern Missouri as well. But then when we look forward into the weekend, we also have a few more rain chances as well, especially if you're in southern Missouri. So Saturday to Monday, not some heavy rainfall in the southern part of the state, but definitely some chances, with a better chance there on Monday through Wednesday of higher rainfall totals. And so with 3 real chances for rain here, if we put this forecast together, this is our weekly 7-day rainfall forecast. And we see now we range anywhere from that 1/4 to an inch of rainfall north of I-70, but southern Missouri could see up to 4 inches of rain in some spots. So significant rainfall there to really end the month going into Thanksgiving. So we're going to have all of these rounds of rain, which means really over the next week, our temperatures aren't going to change much. This is a temperature forecast for Columbia, and we basically see low temperatures between 40 and 50 every day, highs between 50 and 60. And that's because we're going to see a lot of the clouds and rainfall that we're expecting. But do note here at the end, this is for next Wednesday, we start to see these temperatures decreasing. And that's as that last system clears out of here. We're going to see a cold front just in time for the Thanksgiving holiday. And so that brings us here to looking ahead. This is the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, and it starts to show that cold front coming in. And so these blue colors on the map are showing higher probabilities for colder than average temperatures. And so this is valid for the last week of November into the first couple days of December. And this is really going to be our first blast of a winter air mass that's right on time for getting into the December season here as well. Also of interesting note is if we look at the same time frame But for precipitation, Missouri and really all of the US favored to be wetter than average. So we have a pretty active week this week. Could see that persist into next week as well. And then I want to end here. This is from NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, but this is their official winter outlook. And so this is a 3-month outlook for December, January, and February. And want to note a couple things here. So first, we look at the temperature. Expected to be a warmer winter in the southern U.S. with colder temperatures to our north. But if we look here in the middle of Missouri, equal chances. And so not a very strong forecast for temperatures. This means we have an equal chance of being colder or warmer according to their forecast. So not leaning either way. But for precipitation, they do have higher chances of above average precipitation. So this would be good for really kind of erasing our drought as we go into winter. But even with normal temperatures could mean snowier than average as well. So this is just a forecast, but we'll have to see how it pans out there. But otherwise, that's all I've got for today. And thanks for y'all's attention.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate that. I always wonder if we're going to have a snowy winter or not. It looks like I'm going to be where I'm at, about the same as normal. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we have Jennifer. And as most of you know, several of the horticultural specialists around the state have been working with this All-American selections, and we had display gardens throughout the state. And so Jennifer is going to give us kind of a wrap up as the season has closed now, just to what worked and what didn't, and I'll just let her go from there. Thanks.
Thanks, Gwen. And yes, as we go into the later part of fall and into winter, I just thought it'd be a good idea to give a wrap up on the All-America Selection Program. And I will say it's been a wonderful opportunity to do this All-America Selection Display Garden and to provide educational information and garden tours, for people to learn about these plants and consider growing them themselves in their own gardens or in public gardens or master garden projects. And since we started the program back in January, the All-America Selection website has been updated. So if you go there today, this is what the homepage will look like. And the garden that you see there in the upper left is a 2025 display garden. And here in Kirksville, we put our display garden in garden beds, 10 garden beds that were like square plots. But we also had the freedom to design it however we wanted to. And because of the way my garden is set up, we use those garden beds. But other places, other display gardens around the US, were creative. And you can see here in this photo how they were creative and they created this island bed. And I think this is really attractive. But if you're interested in this program, go to this website. You can see at the top there's a menu where you can find AAS winners. You can see where display gardens are at. You can follow a blog, and you can just learn more about this program. Here on the lower right, you can see where you can just click on search winners, and that will be pulled up, and you can get winner updates. So it's a great program. And again, I encourage you to go to this website to learn more. I have been giving programs on this AAS program throughout the year, and this was a plant that I had not talked about yet. This one is Red Impact. It is a sweet pepper, and the reason it's just now being shown to you is because it took a while for it to turn red. It was loaded with peppers, a lot of green peppers through July and August, but it was September before I really started harvesting any that were red. And I will tell you, it is a really good sweet pepper, has great flavor. Of all the peppers we grew, this one had the best flavor. And it was just a pepper that was showy. It just stood out in the garden with its bright red color. The peppers produce thick, sweet walls, even when green. So you can eat this green. And just one that I would highly recommend if you're interested in growing a new type of pepper. This is also another one I don't think I showed before now. This is quickfire hot pepper. And this one was loaded with hot peppers, which I did not eat, but I liked it for its aesthetic purpose. It was showy, it turned red, and then they turned purple. So this one really caught the attention of gardeners walking through it. It would make a nice ornamental pepper for somebody that wanted to grow ornamental peppers. So this was one that I was really impressed with, even though I did not eat it. This is a squash called Sweet Jade. It is a winter type of a squash. It is a single serving type of a squash. And I did pick some and ate these, and these are really good. These were sweet. I did put a little butter, a little brown sugar on them, and they were tasty. So this is one that I would recommend you grow. But I did have issues with squash bugs and cucumber beetles. And unless you treat for those insects, they will likely kill your vines. But what I got out was very good. Now, a question that I've been asked for months is, where do I buy seed for these All-America Selection winners? And can I find them locally at a garden center or a nursery? So let's start by addressing where can you buy seed. Well, if you go to the All-America Selection website and you pull up a particular plant like the red impact pepper, there will be a drop-down menu that says where to buy. And when you click on that, it will show you which seed companies carry the seed for that variety. So for example, red impact pepper can be purchased from Park Seed, Seeds and Such, and Victory Seed Company. So again, if you find one that you're really interested in, you want to know where you can buy the seed, just go to the website, click on where to buy, and go to that drop-down menu, and you'll see the seed companies listed. Now, can you buy them locally at a garden center or a nursery? And the answer is yes. You may not be able to find all of them. You may not be able to find a lot of them. But I was at a local, I would call it like a country type of a store with a very small selection of garden plants back in the spring. And I found the Coral Candy Coleus. And you need to be looking for the All-America Selection symbol on the label. So your plant labels, look down toward the bottom. There'll be it'll be round and it will say AAS. And I believe that AAS was in red lettering. So just look for that symbol on the bedding plants as you are going around the garden centers and the nurseries, and you may likely find some AAS winners. And they may not be the current year, so they may not be 2026 next year or 2025s, but you may find some from a different year. There are videos where you can learn more about All-America Selection winners. So again, if you are very interested in purchasing these plants and you just want to learn more about them, go to the website and look at watch the videos. These are some really good videos that have been made. They're short. Most of them are 30 seconds to about a minute and a half, and you will find them informative. Now let's talk about some of my favorites and what some of these plants were known for. All right, so the best plant to attract pollinators by far was the Vanity verbena, and that is the purple plant that you see in the upper right corner with that buckeye butterfly on it. That verbena grew about 2 to 3 feet tall. I was not expecting that. This was a verbena that was new to me. I was super impressed. Again, wasn't expecting it to get so tall, but I loved it because it was loaded with pollinators. From August through the first hard freeze, we had lots of butterflies, numerous types of butterflies, with buckeye being the most common on it, but lots of different butterflies, soldier beetles, bees. So great plant for pollinators. It truly is a pollinator's paradise. The best tasting pepper that I grew was the Red Impact. Another one I just would highly recommend you try because it was so flavorful. And I froze a lot, so I have some in my freezer that I will use in dishes this winter. The prettiest of the flowers that I grew is a Flama Orange and the Burning Embers Celosia. Together, those were spectacular. You can see in that photo in the lower right. Together, they were just gorgeous. Even alone, I had some separated. They were very pretty, and they were showy, and they just stood out. So in my opinion, they were the prettiest of the ones that I grew. Best of the vegetables. Well, that has to be Constance kohlrabi, and I think the Kirksville Master Gardeners that are on would probably agree with that. This one was a standout. It was really pretty. It was crisp. It had good flavor. We picked some, cut them up at a Master Gardener meeting, tasted them, and it was good, crunchy, just overall a great vegetable. And some people have never had kohlrabi, or they've only had it once or twice. And if you were eating this for the first time, you would have been like, wow, this is crispy, this is crunchy, this is a good vegetable. So that one really impressed me. So that makes the best of the vegetables. Longest lasting, that has to be the pink Deco Max Petunia. That was super impressive. It lasted all season long. It lasted through all the rain we had in June and July in the Kirksville area. Then the rain shut off in mid-August, and we've been dry, and it survived. I did not water it. Only maybe one time I watered it since August, and it just kept growing and flowering. And so it by far has to be called the longest lasting flowering plant of the group. The best foliage is Coral Candy Coleus, and you see that there on the right. It had beautiful foliage, and it too lasted through the first hard frost. But I just have to pick the pink Deco Max as the longest lasting. Rebloomers, Dianthus Capitan Magnifica had a spectacular show of flowers in the spring, in April, May, June. And then they just kind of shut off during the heat of the summer, with a few here and there. But then they just had another flush as the temperatures got cooler in the fall. Same with the yellow red heart and the double shot orange snapdragons. The snapdragons bloomed really well in the spring, and then they took off and bloomed again and had another flush of blooms in the fall, and they too lasted through the first hard freeze, which for this area was around November 11th. All right. So, which are my favorite All-America Selection plants? Well, I can't just pick one because they were all impressive. They were all superior in some way. Every plant selected had, they either had drought tolerance or insect tolerance, or just productivity, color. There was something about them that made them superior. And so it's hard to pick just one, but I'm going to give you some of my favorites. I grew about 35 different All-America selections, and I've kind of narrowed it down to, I think, my top 10. So Constance kohlrabi makes my cut of my few favorites. The Purple Magic Broccoli, the Flamma Orange Celosia, the Burning Ember Celosia, the Pink Deco Max Petunia, the Red Impact Pepper, the Bower Lettuce. I love the Bower lettuce. It looked like pom-poms. Like if you were a cheerleader and using pom-poms, that's what the Bower lettuce looked like. And it had great flavor. So very impressed with the Bower lettuce. Concert Bell Sunflower. That was so spectacular. I even did a photo shoot with those ones. And you can make one cut and you have a ready-made bouquet. And I didn't necessarily like the Vanity Verbena as a cut flower. I mean, it really wasn't one of my top favorites, but I have to include it as a favorite because of all the pollinators. It was just loaded with the pollinators, and I love pollinator plants. So that's why it makes my cut of favorite plants, is for the pollinators that it attracted. And to kind of go back and review how this all started is I will reach out and say Donna Oftenberg, our colleague, is the one that got us started in this. She had done this the previous year and encouraged us all to apply to be a display garden. And it was a great opportunity. So thanks to Donna for getting us into this. And this is a look at the Adair County Extension Garden in the spring. That was likely late March or April. And then you can see the plants have been planted. They're on the right. And then as we went into summer and late summer into fall, here you can see how the beds just filled out and were spectacular looking. Just really showy. Here are the snapdragons. This would have been probably early fall. And then here is the Vanity Verbena with both types of snapdragons. And you can kind of see up toward the upper left, there's dianthus in bloom there, and there's some broccoli. So actually, this may have been late May into June, since the broccoli is still in the bed there. So anyway, great project. Glad we did it. The flowers were fantastic. A lot of these were good for cut flowers. These snapdragons had long enough stems that they could be used for cut flowers. The verbena I did use for cut flowers. They did shatter a little bit after about a week, but these are quite impressive plants. Here you see me with a few of the vegetables. And just to wrap up, let me give you some impact. So as of October 27th, 137 people toured the Adair County MU Extension Garden in Kirksville. I gave 6 in-person educational programs on the All-America Selection Program with 71 people in attendance. 9 youth learned about the All-America Selection Garden, and they participated in the garden by picking flowers and vegetables during the Garden and Grow program. So I incorporated Garden and Grow into the All-America Selection Display Garden. And to wrap up the program, we played bingo. We played All-America Selection Bingo during a Kirksville Master Gardener meeting in October, and 23 Kirksville Master Gardeners participated in that. And here's a few scenes from the educational programs and the tours. And one of the lessons I like to teach during Garden and Grow is pollinators. And because we had so many pollinators out there, particularly on that vanity verbena, the kids were able to catch some of the pollinators, and we were able to identify them and talk about them, and then we release them. And that is a wrap up of the 2025 All-America Selection Display Garden. New seeds will arrive in December of this year for the 2026 gardens. And those of us that are doing this program are all looking forward to 2026. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. I think all of us had a really good experience. My garden in Gentry County had the drought, it had the flood. It was quite, but some things made it through, and the things that made it through were just spectacular. And a shout out, I believe one of the Master Gardener groups entered the design challenge in Missouri, I think around Debbie Kelly's region, and I think they got an honorable mention in the STEAM challenge for the garden design. I think I saw that on the website, so that's pretty cool too. So lots to learn from that. All right. Be sure to put any questions that you have in the chat. We'll try to get to those, and we're just going to move right along. We have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Dave Trinklein. He has served as a state horticulturalist for MU Extension for a while, and he is going to talk to us about some Thanksgiving fruit. So Dr. Trinklein, I will let you take it away.
I'm trying to share my screen, Gwen, but it's not cooperating.
Oh no.
Garden hour. I'll preface this by saying the university decided I needed a new computer, and this new one is driving me crazy. And for me, that trip is not a long one. Garden hour, entire screen. Allow.
Okay, we see.
Are you seeing anything?
We are seeing like the wrong screen. Do you have 2 screens by chance?
You might want to go on to your next speaker, and I'll see if I can't get this resolved. But
okay,
if that next speaker needs to share the screen, I can't share while that person is sharing, but I'll see what I can do here.
Okay. Why don't we do that? So Justin is going to talk to us about soils, And now's a good time to be thinking about your soil because that's the basis of all of it. We can't grow anything without good soil. So Justin's going to talk to us about that. So go ahead,
All
Justin.
right. Thanks, Gwen. So yeah, as Gwen mentioned, now is a good time if you haven't taken a soil sample to go ahead and do that. I used to be based in St. Louis County and we received hundreds and hundreds of samples. So I got the opportunity to help a lot of people with recommendations. So I'm going to talk about some of that. So soil testing, if you're not familiar and haven't done it before, is a really valuable tool to help you understand a lot of things about your soil, whether it's in a lawn or an ornamental bed or a vegetable garden. A lot of home gardens I've found already have sufficient nutrients. If you're spending money on fertilizer you don't need, you're kind of wasting that money. We also see a lot of established home gardens have excess nutrients, and these can cause nutrient tie-up and other problems in the garden, and also can be harmful to the environment. Phosphorus and potassium, these mineral elements, they are finite in the Earth's crust, and there's signs that, for instance, we could run out of phosphorus, so we want to be good stewards of these resources. And every fertilizer, whether it's phosphorus, potassium, nitrogen, does have a carbon footprint. So there is an environmental impact outside of gathering the nutrients. And your soil pH may be too high or too low, and you won't know that until you test. The soil test will allow you to understand what your soil can provide and what you might need to add. So you're going to get tailored fertility and pH adjustment recommendations for the specific plants that you select. And I mentioned the environmental impact. So that soil test allows us to understand exactly what we need to apply, so we don't apply anything extra. You might have heard about the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico or nutrient pollution. And this is kind of a growing problem that often is associated with farmscapes, but urban landscapes, suburban landscapes, and yards contribute a great deal to the runoff of fertilizer. And as these nutrients enter our waterways, whether they be streams, lakes, ponds, algae consume these nutrients and grow. And then when that algae decays, it robs oxygen from the water. So this can cause fish kills and other problems in our bodies of water. pH is something that is really important for nutrient availability, and this is a measure of acidity or basicity, and the scale for pH runs from 0 to 14. So a soil test will give you this information on the pH of your soil. Most plants prefer to be kind of in the 6.2 to 6.5, 6.7 range. So we want to kind of optimize our soil to get it to that level. Most Missouri soils, or many Missouri soils, are acidic, and so they might need lime. And over time, soil, even after you add lime, will revert to its native pH. So if your soil is acidic, more than likely, every so often you will have to add lime to kind of bring it back to that optimal level. There are some exceptions. We do have some plants that really prefer acidic soils. And so in those cases, we might need to add sulfur to lower the pH. But in a lot of cases, we might need to add a little bit of lime to raise the pH. And in many circumstances, you won't need to add anything to alter your pH. Soil tests also tell you about your soil organic matter, and this is a really important component of the function of soil. So the picture on the bottom right-hand side is kind of a blown up image of a soil colloid. And so at the center of that colloid is a small piece of organic matter that's being colonized by bacteria and fungi, and the fungal hyphae spread out from that piece of organic matter, and they help bind together the disparate soil particles, sand, silt, and clay, to form these nice clumps that allow for good water infiltration and good ability for roots to move through the soil and access the nutrients that they need. It also releases nitrogen over the course of the growing season. So as your organic matter levels go up, the requirement of fertilizer, nitrogen additions goes down. And Often existing gardens have adequate organic matter. When I see gardens that are low in organic matter, they're generally new gardens, or maybe they're in a subdivision where there is a lot of grading, the topsoil has been moved away, and they're left with kind of a clay subsoil that's very low in organic matter. Too much organic matter can cause excess nutrient issues, and then too much organic matter added at once, compost that has not been thoroughly composted, can cause high carbon to nitrogen ratios that can lock up nitrogen in the soil. But just like pH, you won't really know what you have until you test. In order to get good results from a soil test, we need to take a good sample, and we don't want to take just one shovel full. We want to take 8 to 12 subsamples, and then we'll combine those together and we'll have a composite sample that's representative of the area that we sample. We want to stick the shovel in down to 6 inches and cut a little sliver of soil, and then do that 8 to 10 times, throw it in a bucket. But you do want to think about your sampling procedure. And for instance, your vegetable garden, you've probably added things over the years, fertilizer or compost, and your lawn, perhaps you haven't added anything. So you'll want to take 2 separate samples from those different areas. The same thing with a vegetable bed versus an ornamental bed. You'll want to do separate samples. We only need about 2 cups to send to the lab to analyze. It's important to label your samples so you know what those results mean and what they correspond to when you get them back. I wanted to just review a couple soil test reports because they can be a little bit hard to read, to let you know what you're looking at when you do get your results back. So on the left-hand side, these are the actual values from the laboratory analysis, and it'll list your nutrients in pounds per acre, your pH, and your percentage organic matter. And this on the right-hand side is more of a relative nutrient and pH value that goes from very low to excess. At the bottom here, you'll get the actual recommendations of things that you need to add to your soil to optimize it for the plants that were selected. This soil has a pH of 6.7 and very high organic matter at 18.2. 4 to 6% is sufficient for most gardens. This crop selected was azaleas. These are a strong acid-loving crop, so they are kind of an exception to that general pH rule. But we can see in terms of nutrients, we don't need to add any nitrogen. We don't need to add any phosphorus, just a little bit of potassium in the form of potash. Because these are an acid-loving crop and the pH is 6.7, the soil test report recommends that 31 pounds of sulfur per 1,000 square feet be added. Takes about 6 months for sulfur to lower the soil pH, so that's helpful to test in the fall. You can get that sulfur incorporated. If you're going to do a big planting of something like azaleas or blueberries, I always encourage folks to soil test, get that sulfur incorporated prior to the establishment of those plants. This next one is for a lawn, and so this has a pretty low pH at 4.6. Decent organic matter, so that's great. This is for a cool season, fescue, bluegrass, or rye lawn. And because the pH is so low, 225 pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet are recommended. But these notes in the bottom are very helpful because they tell you don't apply more than 50 pounds per 1,000 in one application. This is because you could burn your lawn with too much lime at once. So you want to break up that 225 pounds into 50-pound increments and spread them out 6 months apart. There's other helpful notes here on lawn establishment, so a lot of really good information on this soil test report. There's several kinds of lime. The most common one is calcium carbonate, and you'll want to use calcium carbonate lime unless your soil test recommends dolomitic lime, which would occur in the case if you also had a magnesium deficiency. And this is a vegetable garden, so we're kind of in this neutral pH range around 7, but this is very common, excess phosphorus and potassium, so lots of compost, manure, maybe complete fertilizer added over time, so we don't really need to worry about adding any of those. 4% organic matter, so we're within that sufficient range. We're at a good pH, so we're not adding any lime. And this is a situation where this is kind of a do nothing soil test. So you have sufficient or excess phosphorus and potassium, you have enough organic matter to supply nitrogen to the crops, and your pH is in a good range. So you don't have to do anything here, which is good to know because you're not going to waste your money on inputs in your garden. So we can receive soil samples at your local extension office. If you're not sure where that is, you can do a web search with your county name and MU extension to get that address. For more details, we offer a wide variety of soil testing in addition to the basic soil testing that I showed you today. And we tell folks to sample kind of at the same time every year, and fall is a good time to do it. And ideally, you want to sample every 2 to 3 years so you can track changes in your soil over time. And that's all I got.
All right, thanks, Justin. We have a question in there about the amount of sulfur, if there's a max. I did a quick search, but I don't know if you want to take a look at that. And that was in pounds. I did not get the unit in there, so you probably would need to know that as well. Dr. Trinklein. Let's see here. I am not sure what to tell you to do. So we're seeing your screen, but we're seeing just your Zoom screen, not the PowerPoint screen. Do you want to email me your PowerPoint, Dr. Trinklein, and I could show it here, and you'll just tell me where to.
Okay, let me just try. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Let me just try this, and we'll get it recorded and on YouTube. Thanksgiving is associated with food and Thanksgiving dinners and so forth. So when discussing Thanksgiving related plants, I chose 3 food items: cranberry, sweet potato, and pumpkin. When the first colonists arrived in Plymouth Rock and subsequent ones in Northeast United States, they found a small red berry growing on a bog type of plant, which the Native Americans called ibimi, which literally interpreted means bitter berry. And they certainly were right on with their name of cranberry. Cranberry, for many years, was wildcrafted, and by that I simply mean the nation's supply was met by just going out and gathering it from the wild. But then around the latter part of the 19th, early part of the 20th century, cranberries were commercially produced. And the fact of life is we often see pictures of cranberries floating and people in there with waders and whatever, with some sorts of rakes trying to grab them, and that's only the harvesting process. They do not need to grow in standing water, although they do like a lot of water in acidic soil. Cranberry, by and large, is consumed in 3 different ways. We consume it in cranberry sauces and so forth. We consume it as cranberry juice, and that's a big portion now of the cranberry production. And it's also baked into breads and other confectioneries for a novel taste. Cranberry is a healthful food, if you will, very low in calories, high in vitamin C. And as such, scientists are still discovering new health benefits from the consumption of cranberries. The second plant is sweet potato. Now, many of us have gone to a grocery store and seen a tin of, quote, candied yams for sale. Well, a yam is not a sweet potato. A sweet potato is not a yam. They belong to two totally different genera. The one thing they do have in common is that they're both storage roots. We do not grow yams in the United States. The growing season is not long enough. And frankly, the use of a root vegetable usually is taken up by either Irish potato or sweet potato. There are two different types of sweet potatoes, which, by the way, Columbus encountered as he first set foot in the West Indies. There, the natives were calling a plant with a root that they ate batatas. So again, the interpretation is potato. So Ipomyobatatas is the scientific name for sweet potato. White-fleshed, sometimes called dry flesh types, found their way north where they were favored. Most people associate sweet potato with the moist yellow/orange fleshed types. And as such, these are the ones that are now popular for consumption, not only at Thanksgiving, but anytime there is a formal dinner that especially involves turkey. Sweet potatoes seem to be obligatory. Sweet potato also is, first of all, it's a very easy crop to grow from the standpoint of labor. Very heat loving. So in Missouri, we planted late, and by that I mean well after the ground is warmed and the danger of frost is past. And then all we really need to do, if we have brought our soil up to test, would be to watch for insects and diseases, and there aren't really that many. Sweet potato is extremely tolerant of heat. It is very intolerant of frost and needs to be harvested after the first light frost of the season. There will be no or very little additional food pumped into the sweet potato root by the plant once the temperatures fall. Sweet potatoes in the home garden that are dug and might accidentally have been injured should be allowed to form a callus in a warm, out of the way of sun, dry place for a couple of days. And once that callus is formed, they can be stored. Again, the health benefits of sweet potatoes are numerous. They are a very potent source of provitamin A, which is healthful. And they also contain minerals, a bit of protein, and so forth. Sweet potato, unfortunately, has the habit in production of mutating. They're called bud sports. And those folks who grow sweet potato roots to serve as starts for commercial growers have individuals specially trained to look for these bud sports and rogue them out of the supply, lest there be a dilution of the favorable things that the original variety, let's say Beauregard, that's a very widely grown one, was noted for. In Missouri, Jewel is a very good one, as well as Georgia Jet, but it is a long season, heat-loving plant, and it does store fairly well at temperatures about 40 degrees and in dry conditions. The third crop that I chose to talk about is pumpkin. Pumpkin is a rather generic term for the fruit of several species in the genus Cucurbita. The pumpkin that is associated more with Halloween is called Cucurbita pepo. And it's edible. I have eaten pumpkin pie made from Cucurbita pepo, where the pumpkin is, if you will, hollowed out, seeds discarded, and then the mesocarp, that's the flesh, scraped out, cooked, baked, and so forth. And it's very good. It's a bit more grainy than the pumpkin that you buy in tins, but on the other hand, it's quite flavorful. The other two pumpkins are Cucurbita machata, which comprises a number of winter squash as well as the field pumpkin, in Cucurbita maxima. If you've seen these pictures of these huge, they're supposed to be pumpkins in the largest pumpkin contest at the state fair or so forth, that really is a type of winter squash. But on the other hand, since it is a fruit of a Cucurbita species, it goes by the name of pumpkin, or we honor it as a pumpkin, or so forth. Pumpkins are relatively easy to grow as long as we have the ability to control insects. There are dwarfer types of pumpkins that take up less space, but a lot of the more productive types really demand a lot of garden space. So this is not an item that if you have a backyard postage stamp sized garden that you likely want to grow. Pumpkins do suffer from damage in two ways by the bean leaf beetle. One way is feeding on the leaves and reducing photosynthetic area and such. But the far greater problem is that bean leaf beetle vector bacterial diseases. And you will notice pumpkins sometimes growing very healthily, and then all of a sudden they start to wilt a bit one day, maybe recover the night, wilt more the next day, perhaps partially cover, and by the third day they're done. That's an example of a bacterial wilt, which clogs the vascular tissue. And again, that bacterium is vectored by the bean leaf beetle. So pumpkins that are not in some way, shape, or form managed so as to combat the bean leaf beetle, you're going to lose a goodly number, or at least a substantive amount of the crop. Pumpkins commercially are direct seeded. You can get a start on the growing season by growing pumpkins in like peat pots or so forth inside in a sunny window for a week or 10 days before you would have planted seed. And that way you've got that start on the season. The pumpkins that are being developed today are being developed more so for ornamental use than for food. So we now have pumpkins that are, excuse me, covered with warts to make them look more ghoulish. White pumpkins you can paint more easily, and so forth. Again, I say the pumpkins that you buy as a pumpkin puree or paste in a can are field pumpkins, and do believe that Illinois is the largest producer of pumpkins from the standpoint of the pulp pumpkins that we buy for eating as opposed to for Halloween and so forth. I apologize for not having the pictures. We'll get them to Gwen and get them on the YouTube channel just as soon as we can. And with that, Gwen, I will turn it back to you unless any questions came in.
Thank you, Dr. Trinklein. Those are my favorite types of fruits for the holidays. So you hit my tops. So that's good. Are there any questions before we move on? And we can try to get go ahead. Okay, we can try to get the pictures up on the YouTube, the PowerPoint, up
I
on
will
the
send
YouTube.
them.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, we'll figure out how to get that done so people can kind of see what's going on with that. So we are kind of winding down the hour. So let me go ahead and I will, we were going to talk about forcing blooms, but I can do that next time. So don't worry about that. So remember that our next meeting will be December 17th, same time, noon to 1. You can register so that at this website so that you can get an email invite that should have the Zoom link directly in it. Go forward here. Again, I just want to put up the survey because this is really important information for us to have to help us move forward with the program next year and just make sure that we are giving you what you need with this program. So any suggestions and the feedback is well received with that. Also, there were a lot of links that were dropped in the chat as the program went on today. So if you go to if you open your chat and you go to the 3 little dots, it will give you a pop down here where you can save the chat, and it will save that in with your Zoom file on your computer so that you always have a record of those different Zoom links. And then just remember that you can reach any of us around the state and ask us any of your questions that you might have, and we will try to help you make the best garden that you've ever had. So if you have no other questions, we're going to close out just a little bit early today, and we'll get on with your day. So I hope everyone is well. I'll keep the meeting open in case you have some questions. Thank you so much for joining us today.